Imagine you're a little kid again and you're getting ready for school, and let's just say you're having a bad day. You delay while you're brushing your teeth, you fight over whether you have to do it or not, you drop on the floor and you scream when it's time to put your shoes on. I'm not going to school. And it's a fight. But this time, it's not a fight to go to school with your parents. Instead of your parents, they're off somewhere. Jesus is the one who is helping you get ready for school. And he's, of course, patient through all that. And he finally gets you to walk down the street and put your backpack on and zip up your coat. And you're waiting for the bus and you're playing. And then you hear that diesel engine coming and the air brakes make their shh and there's the squeak. And the bus comes and Jesus leans down for a quick hug. And you reach up and you wrap your arms around Jesus's neck and you run to go up those corrugated steps and you're about to sit down in your green vial chair and Jesus calls out to you before the bus doors close. He says, what does he say? How does he send you off to school? And what we say to answer this question, it depends a lot on what our parents said to us and what we say to our kids if we have children. Study hard. Listen to your teacher. Don't eat paste today. And I'm at the stage of life where I actually do get to put a kid on the bus every morning. And what I often catch myself saying is what my mom said to me. Be good. Now, there's a lot of worse things that I could say, right? I'd rather my kid be good than successful. I'd rather my kid be good than popular. I'd rather have my kid be good than smart or even hardworking. I'd even rather have my kid be good than obedient. But part of the reason that my mom told me to be good is because she knew I was already pretty smart. And she had a good idea that I might work hard. But she also knew that if I had a shot to steal cookies from the cookie jar, I'd go for it. And if I didn't get away, there's a good chance I would hit a kid. She told me to be good because that's what I needed to work on. Additionally, she had an anthropology that is like so many of ours. She had a basic belief about humanity that kids need to be taught to be good because good doesn't come naturally. We are born selfish, violent, and devious, this anthropology says. We tell a story of Adam, a first human being who sinned, and that sin affects all of us. And I mean all of us, as in every last person and in the entirety of each person. And that sin that affects all of us explains how our hearts are bent away from the true and the beautiful and the good. And that's why we need training and laws and accountability. And you know what? I do think that people need training and laws and accountability. Research shows that if people think they can get away with lying and stealing, they will do it. All of us. But there's also a problem with seeing this world this way. The problem is that accountability and training and laws often depend on an or else. Be good because somebody is going to find out, and then there's going to be a consequence. And God fits right into this because God is the heavenly elf on the shelf, the one who will always know, even if no one else does. And God always has the power to apply that consequence. And to make matters worse, when we read Romans, Paul reminds us that the consequence of sin in Adam is death. So we're all infected and inclined to do bad stuff. And if we do bad stuff, we're going to die because God. And this idea, the idea that's supposed to help us be good, it makes us afraid of God. And that's why I'm inviting you all to give up on being good for Lent. Rather, I want you to give up on the need to be seen as good and the efforts to hide the parts of you that you have to show to prove that you're good. Because this way of seeing the world, it's deadly. It makes us afraid of God. It makes us afraid of one another because When we tell people to be good, the other side of the be good coin is the message that you're bad. And we say that to each ourselves and to one another all the time. You're bad. I'm bad. We're all bad. But that's outdated. That's an old anthropology. What Paul said in Romans chapter 5 is that if the many died through the one man's trespass, that's Adam, much more surely have the grace of God and the free gift in the grace of the one man, Jesus Christ, abounded for the many. The free gift is not like the effect of the one man's sin, for if the judgment following one trespass brought condemnation, the free gift following many trespasses brings justification. If because of the one man's trespass death exercised dominion through that one, much more surely will those who receive the abundance of grace and the free gift of righteousness exercise dominion in life of the one man, Jesus Christ. Paul sums it up with these two verses. Therefore, just as one man's trespass led to condemnation for all, so one man's act of righteousness leads to justification and life for all. Just as by one man's disobedience the many were made sinners, so by one man's obedience the many will be made righteous. One man's act of righteousness leads to justification and life for all. But we have to ask, what does it mean to be justified? Justification is the declaration that you are justified. Well, if you are liquefied, that means you are made a liquid. If you are deified, it means you are made a deity, a god. So if you are justified, it means you are made just. It means you have been made right. You have been made good. And that means that I'm a preacher that can't just say bad, 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 bad to people anymore. And I can't look at myself and say bad anymore, because Jesus gave a gift to all people, and that gift is righteousness, justification. He makes us right. He makes us good. Now, can we still do bad things? Of course. But it's not who we are. It's who we were. So when Jesus is putting you on the bus now, it's not be good, and it's definitely not be good or else. It's you are good. I'm trying as hard as I can. Instead of saying to my kids, be good, I'm going to say, you're a good kid. You're a good girl. You're a good boy. I'm going to invite you to not just say that to your kids, but say it to your parents, say it to your enemies, say it to one another, say it to yourself. Do it because it's so much work living as a sinner that's trying to be good. You'll never be good enough. You'll always have to justify your behavior. But in Jesus, you're already justified. You're not a sinner that's trying to be good anymore. You're a saint that sometimes sins. And yes, that sometimes sin still hurts people and it still has consequences, but by the grace of God, it doesn't define you. Now, when I say you don't have to be good, that is a sentence that begs for some clarification. It's still good to be good. God still wants us to behave well. But we don't have to behave well for God to value us or for the church to value us. We don't have to behave well. We don't have to be good to be loved, either by God or God's people. And a person doesn't have to be good to be forgiven. Not by God and not by God's people. The amazing, liberating thing about all of this is, just as your sinfulness was mostly out of your control, so much more is your righteousness, your goodness. What Paul is trying to say with us in those big words in Romans is this: what Adam did to us with sin and death, Jesus does to us with grace and life. So that's the big theological concept. Now the question is, what do we do with it? how do we live it out? What's going to be different for us? And I've got just a few things. The first thing I'm going to invite you to do is contemplation. Contemplation is prayer that engages through the heart, not the mind. And there's nothing wrong with using your mind. God told us to love God with our heart, soul, strength, and mind. But our mind is where our ego lives, and it's where our fear lives, and it's where we try to rationalize and justify ourselves. And contemplative prayer is prayer that doesn't try to think about things. Instead, when thoughts come, we just kind of let them go. And eventually, first our room gets quiet, and then our body gets quiet. And finally, as our mind gets quiet, our center, our heart, connects with God's. And when we do that, we feel the truth of this message that Paul gives us, that God loves us. The second thing I'm going to invite you to do is to give up on image management. And this is really simple. I mean, think about how much work we put into every day managing our image. And I don't just mean brushing our hair and teeth. I mean defending our choices. When you catch yourself trying to make yourself look good and defend yourself and justify yourself, we can just stop. There's no need for defensiveness when it's Jesus that makes us righteous. We're still going to screw up, but we don't have to cover it up or pretend that we don't. We can safely admit when we're wrong. Ironically, in a world that hates hypocrisy, this is probably the best image management we can do. But I honestly and truly invite you to just give up on worrying what other people think about you and to know that God sees you and others as righteous people that sometimes need sin and forgiveness instead of sinful people in need of forgiveness. Next invitation is to get beyond behavior modification. Punishments and rewards are all about shaping what we do, and they're actually effective in changing behavior, and there's a time to change our behaviors. But when we are living as a community and as a family, as we're building one another up, the goal is not simply to change behaviors, but for us to find a new identity. And so, beyond the behavior modification, we remember again and again that God decided that we were worth dying for when we were doing all the wrong things. So the next thing I'm going to invite you to do is change the words that you say. There's no such thing as a bad person. People do bad things, but God in Christ has declared us good. So we tell people that they are good. We treat people like they are good. We are slow to anger and we are quick to forgive. Finally, my invitation is to relax. In Galatians, Paul contrasts the fruit of the Spirit and the work of the flesh. What comes from the Spirit is fruit. Fruit is sweet, fruit gives life, and fruit is naturally occurring. It just comes. Sin, on the other hand, is something that we have to work at. So, the good news today is that you don't have to be good for God to love you, because God's love has already made you good. When we see ourselves as bad people trying to be good, we fail. But when we see ourselves as made righteous in Jesus Christ, good comes naturally. Thanks for listening.